Humans are affected more strongly and more passionately when we see ourselves reflected back to us. And this happens when we are younger. But as we grow up and older, our lives become more and more structured and busy. It's then difficult to feel such inspiration and movement again in ourselves. This is African Literature on the NTA, Africa's largest television network. My name is Nen Nabasi, and my delight to have you again and again.
There are many intricate parts and occurrences in the society that many people vehemently refuse to talk about for their safety. The ludicrous and inhumane acts done by certain people effortlessly fall into this category. Adanna by Toks Aruoture is a novel that delved into one of such aspects. Toks Aruoture, in telling this story, describes it as a mixed grill.
This man lying on the floor who turns out to be her husband, and she's been accused left, right, and center and being suspected of being behind his death. And then we go back to the beginning of her life, where she grew up in a very humble home, in a happy home amongst two siblings. She had a brother and a sister, her mom and her dad. Father was very hardworking and also was a supporter of her dreams. Adanna's dream was to become an aerospace engineer and to study in the United States. And her father helped to foster the dream. He told her she could do it, it was possible, and she really believed this was going to happen. And then tragedy strikes. Actually, a series of tragedies strike, and that feels very much like it becomes the theme of the book, where it's one tragedy after another. So the first one that happens is her father takes out a large loan to service a purchase because he gets this promising order from a wealthy client. And somehow, just before things go through, the client pulls out. But now he has all of this stock, and he has all of this. He has this heavy loan that he has to pay back. The stress of it all eventually leads to him having a stroke, and he passes away. Bearing in mind that even though his business was not very healthy, he was the sole provider in the family. So that now leaves Adanna, her mother, her brother, and her sister. Meanwhile, she had fallen in love with this handsome young man, and he was also in love with her, but then he had to travel to the United Kingdom to go study. He promised that he will come back for her. They now are trying to get past their lives, sister very sick, no one knows what's wrong with her, they don't have money to treat her. The mother somehow gets into a little bit of prostitution to helps keep their body together. Eventually, she sacrifices herself and says, I'll marry the wealthy client. Also happens to be the father of the young man she's in love with.
Without mincing words, the book stirs up so many emotions and themes ranging from gender inequality, early and forced marriages, social and economic classes, to love and more.
So the first thing it brings up is gender inequality, where we have the situation where after her father passes away, the mom ends up in prostitution because it starts off with the loan shark telling her, if you just sleep with me, I'll write off the loan. And she does it, but he doesn't write off the loan. He still continues to make demands. Now, if that had been a man, it would have been handled very differently. So that's one. And then you have Adanna, who goes off and gets married to a man 3 times her age. And there are people who look down on her for doing that, even though he was the one who engineered it and he's the one who had the power. So there's a power play going on throughout the book. So we also look at social and economic classes and how being in a lower socio-economic class can be such a danger to one's life even, and how dreams are, everyone can dream, whether you are wealthy or you are poor. Dreams are free in some ways, but it just seems like it's an unfair world where dreams of poor people are at a higher stake of not coming to pass, because they have so much more working against them that will easily dash their dreams. Then we also have betrayal and mistrust.
Lessons that can be drawn from the piece include hopefulness, resilience, loyalty, and others.
There's a lesson of hope in the book as well, where she might have been in a situation that she didn't want to be, but she continued to be inspired by the person she wanted to be. And a lot of times, what we do is we draw strength and inspiration from our current circumstance. But what ends up happening is you end up just going round in circles. If you're being inspired by where you stand today, you're always going to become who you are today. But if you're able to be inspired by who you could become or who you want to become, that inspiration pulls you towards that person. There's also the lesson of learning to put yourself in other people's shoes when you go through, when they're being disloyal to you. For example, with her mother, I was actually angry when I was reading and watching her daughter sacrifice herself to a man, so that, because she was failing as a mother. I mean, but then the reality is the mother lived in her own world of tragedy and loss and emptiness. And in her mother's world, there was no hope. So when people come into our lives, they come still living in their own world, and that world contains their negative experiences, their dashed hopes, their dreams, their challenges, their personalities, mindset. So much comes with the person that if you find that they are not aligning with you, or they disappoint you one way or the other, you cannot blame them in that. You can't isolate the person and say you're a bad person or you did this, but you have to understand that they live in a world of their own, and in their world, what they're doing makes sense, even if it doesn't make sense to you.
Adanna, the title of the novel, is also the major character in the work. Some other characters played key roles to get the story to a resolution.
The youngest son of her husband, but also Adanna's love, who in love eventually back from the UK and discovers that his father had taken his wife, and it's not very pretty, it's ugly, but he still continues to have a soft spot for her. And then there is Akanna, who is Anayo's older brother and Chief's first son. He's described at one point in the book as a wild animal, because that really is what he is. He literally abused her body, abused her psychologically, and is also a suspect in killing his father because his father was scared of him. And then there's Adanna's father, who was very hardworking, loyal, loved his family, but then his death plunges the family into financial and emotional distress. And then we've got her mother, and we have Jidenna, her brother, who is not supportive of the marriage, but there isn't so much he can do because he's got to go off on his own and try and make something of his own life. And then her sister, who died quite young as well. There's also an auntie in the book who was very supportive, her father's sister, and supportive of her, but we don't get to see much of her in the story, except when she was getting married and she was against the marriage.
For Toks, the readers of this piece should fall within this demographic.
I would want to say 16, only because I want young girls to be aware of what's possible, what could go wrong, and they can be aware and they can protect themselves from it, especially if they don't have the sort of close relationship with their parents that will shield them and educate them about being, ending up with the wrong person or marrying someone for wealth, whether or not it's justified. So I would say at about 16 upwards, where you've got to have a heart of steel to read it.
Her personal impressions about early marriage and marriage in general is shared.
It's hard to put an age, but I would not want anyone getting married before the age of 18. And I only say that because I know that my grandparents' generation and even our parents' generation got married that early. And in many cases, it worked out for them. In some cases, it didn't. So early marriage is something, and I know there are religions that support it, but I don't think it's something that should be supported at all. We're talking of minors who don't have a voice, who don't get to make a choice. And in the United States, it's called statutory rape when the child is underage. And so this comes under the banner that sounds like, okay, they're just getting married, but no, they're not getting married. She's been forced into a servitude with her body that she had no desire to get into. And so the other point I want to make is, especially in our culture in Africa, I can't speak for the whole of Africa, but certainly in Nigeria, marriage is touted and exalted beyond more than it should be. I'm a supporter of marriage. I think it's beautiful. I believe it's God's will for a man and a woman to get married and create a family, but I don't agree with it being exalted so high that a woman's life and her happiness ends up being at stake.
African literature is described as powerful and possessing the ability to connect its people to their roots.
It's always a tapestry of emotions and imagery. And in this book, Adesua does a great job of giving us vivid pictures. For example, in one of the scenes where she's describing her garden, she describes the roses as, I think she said, ruby red, and another flower as canary yellow. And so you can just see the landscape of Africa when many African novels are being written. We get to see the richness of our soil, the environment, the culture. I love that proverbs are woven into this particular book, but I particularly love that that Igbo phrases and sentences are used as well, even though I have no clue. I don't understand Igbo. My husband's half Igbo, but I don't understand Igbo besides Kedu. So, but reading it and seeing Igbo phrases in it, there's something so heartwarming about it. And especially as a Nigerian living in the United Kingdom, I'm always homesick and always longing for touch points that connect me back to my country. So I love African literature because it makes sure that the connection I have, or should I say it confirms that the connection I have to my homeland is not broken.
Reading African literature for Toks is a conscious routine that leaves a refreshing impact.
For a long time, I used to do all my fiction reading at Christmas time. I'll take time off work for the month of December leading into January, and all I do is read. But then recently, I started to feel rather burnt out and felt like, just felt demotivated in my work. I shared this on my most recent podcast episode. I felt demotivated in my work, and someone said, "Toks, it sounds like you're burned out." And I began thinking, let me go back to doing what I really love doing. I love to write. I'm writing a book at the moment, and I love to read. And I thought, let me read, but I don't want to read a book on leadership or entrepreneurship. I want to read fiction, something rich that will get my creative juices flowing again. And that's when I picked up Adanna, and I read it all within 24 hours. I didn't sleep. I just couldn't put it down. And then that was it's actually my first book of Adesua's I've read. And then I went and grabbed another one, and I couldn't put that down either. So now my treat is come Saturday, end of the working week, actually Friday night is my reading time. And I'm only reading fiction from Friday night through till Sunday.
Adesua Ngokedi is described in these words.
She's a brilliant writer, and I still, having now read two of her books, I still don't know how she's able to swing between romance and drama in the way that she's done. And she doesn't take one away from the other. You know, you don't lose the 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 beauty and the emotions that come with her romantic novels or her romance novels, and you don't lose that because she's written a book like Adanna. And even in reading Adanna, it's not so flighty that or superficial that it no longer makes sense. It's very real and very deep. And so I highly respect her and highly recommend her books.
Toks wraps up the session with her lavish praise for Africa and Africans.
Celebrate us. We really are who we think we are. And when I say who we think we are, it's not who they've told us we are or what the news has projected about us. Deep down in every African is the confidence of who we are as a people. Deep down within us is the certainty of us being people who love each other, who are supportive, who are kind-hearted. Um, don't allow a shiny object, i.e., Western culture, to allow you to deny who we are as a person. You know, don't allow what looks better on the outside to draw us out of who we are as Africans. We really are a dynamic people. Um, God spent extra time when He was creating us, from our beautiful brown skin to our hair, to the way we think, to our love, our readiness to smile and support and help. That's who we are as Africans.
Have you ever stopped to wonder the feeling created by your words? Words, whether spoken or written, generate an atmosphere of sounds for the readers. Cacophony is our literary device coming up next.
Cacophony. Cacophony is a literary device born from the ancient Greek word cacophonia, meaning bad sound. Refers to the use of harsh, discordant, or jarring sounds in language, often for artistic effect. It involves intentionally using words or phrases that create a harsh or grating sound when spoken, such as words with harsh consonants, repeated syllables, or unusual combinations of sounds. Furthermore, it can be used to create a sense of chaos, conflict, or discomfort in the language, and it's often used to evoke a particular emotion or tune in a literary work. The popular tongue twister, like "she sells seashells down by the seashore," is cacophonic. Cacophony is usually comprised of harsh consonants like D's, V's, and K's. Cacophony is considered the opposite of euphony, which is the use of beautiful, melodious sounding words. Despite its harshness, cacophony is used for musicality in writing. It makes use of consonnative sounds to create disgust, frustration, or interest in the reader, with loudness, noisiness, and energy in hard consonant sounds. It creates interesting poems, emotive prose, and playful songs. Examples of cacophony in some literary text: Aminata honors the memory of love, the cacophonous sounds of war. Gunfire, screams, and explosions mirror the chaos and displacement of Sierra Leone's civil war. Ongugiwa Tiongo's Devil on the Cross, the cacophonous sounds of the city, car horns, screeching tires, wailing sirens emphasize the chaos and disorientation of modern urban life in Kenya. And Wale Soyinka's The Lion and the Jewel, the sounds of the village drums, singing, and laughter convey the conflict between traditional and modern ways of life, as well as the chaos of cultural change in Nigeria. Importance of cacophony. Cacophony mirrors the subject matter with harsh sounding sentences and tones. It creates a sense of discomfort or chaos, reflecting the complexity and disorder of life. It calls the reader's attention to whatever subject is being discussed and creates a negative impression in the reader's mind of that scenario. It evokes emotions and creates a lasting impression, providing a unique musicality to writing and making it more engaging and memorable. By embracing cacophony, writers can add a new layer of depth and complexity to their work by successfully conveying the chaos, discomfort, and disorder that often accompany the human experience. To crown it all up, through the use of cacophony, writers can push the boundaries of language and create a more immersive, thought provoking, and memorable reading experience.
On the arts composition segment today, we'll bring you an inspiring African woman who's made reading African literature a lifestyle.
Toks Aruoture, a visionary transformational keynote speaker, executive coach, successful entrepreneur, and sought after consultant, internationally recognized for her pioneering work in authentic communication. Toks grew up in Benin and had a secondary education in the northern part of Nigeria, Kaduna to be precise. She attended Ogun State University for a year before relocating to the United Kingdom, where she has built a successful career as an entrepreneur, interior designer, and a business consultant. With a dynamic global presence, Toks has captivated audiences on prestigious platforms, including TEDx, SIG, The Telegraph, NVA, and AIT. Accompanying presentations on mindset transformation, authenticity in business, and personal development have inspired diverse audiences across continents. As a highly respected consultant, Toks specializes in guiding individuals and organizations through transformational journeys in faith, entrepreneurship, and mindset. A unique approach combines deep insights with practical strategies, empowering clients to embrace their authentic selves and achieve sustainable success. She is the founder of the Baby Cat Shop, the UK's premier baby furniture store at Kings Road, Chelsea. She is an author and a passionate lover of Africa and its literature.
To bring this episode to a wrap, as usual, we will drop you an African wise saying, hoping you will draw inspiration from it. And on this note, I will say, remain blessed till next time. Bye.